There is a quiet truth that whispers itself into your life long before you have language for it, long before you can explain it to anyone else. And that truth is this: you were never meant to blend in. You feel it in moments when the world seems too loud for your sensitivity, too rushed for your depth, too shallow for your longing. You feel it when conversations skim the surface and something inside you aches for meaning, for essence, for the invisible currents beneath what everyone else calls reality. And if you are honest with yourself, you have felt this for as long as you can remember. This is not a flaw in you. This is not a defect of personality. This is the signature of a soul that arrived here with a different assignment. The chosen ones are not chosen by a crown or a ceremony or an external authority. They are chosen by an inner resonance, by a calling that cannot be silenced even when it is ignored. They are the dreamers who cannot stop imagining a kinder world, the seekers who cannot accept borrowed answers, the awakened souls who feel homesick for something they cannot name. And because their frequency is different, their path is different. They often walk alone, not because they are unlovable, but because they are tuned to a deeper channel of life. Loneliness, for the chosen one, is not a punishment. It is an initiation. It is the space in which the noise falls away and the real conversation can begin. When others drift away, when relationships fall apart without a clear villain, when the familiar structures dissolve, it can feel like rejection. But look more closely. What is really happening is that life is gently, sometimes firmly, removing what no longer matches who you are becoming. The soul does not grow in crowded rooms of constant validation. The soul grows in silence, in reflection, in those long stretches where you are left alone with your own truth. There is a moment on this path when the ego protests loudly. The ego says, something must be wrong with me. The ego counts likes, friends, invitations, approval, and tries to measure worth by external echoes. But you are not your ego, and your worth was never meant to be measured that way. The ego wants certainty, control, and constant reassurance. The soul wants expansion, alignment, and freedom. When you begin to live from the soul, the ego feels threatened, and it translates that threat into fear and loneliness. But beneath that discomfort is a profound recalibration taking place. Think of the seed buried in the dark soil. It is alone. It is unseen. There is no applause for its struggle. Yet it is precisely in that darkness that it gathers strength, that it reaches downward and upward at the same time, that it prepares to break through the surface and become something it could never have been if it had stayed exposed and comfortable. You are in that soil now. The quiet you feel is not emptiness, it is incubation. Chosen ones often experience early awakenings to pain, to injustice, to the fragility of life. They see through illusions sooner than others. They sense that chasing status, possessions, or approval cannot satisfy the deeper hunger within them. This awareness can be isolating. It can make you feel like a stranger in familiar places. But it is also what frees you from living a borrowed life. You are here to remember who you are beneath the conditioning, beneath the roles, beneath the masks you learn to wear to be accepted. When you walk alone, you begin to hear the subtle guidance that was always there but drowned out by external noise. You begin to recognize the difference between intuition and fear, between desire and distraction. You start to notice that your soul speaks in feelings, in quiet nudges, in moments of still knowing. The soul always knows, and it knows the way forward, even when the mind cannot map it out. There will be times when you look around and wonder why it seems easier for others, why they move in groups, why they appear so certain and supported. But remember, not all togetherness is connection, and not all solitude is loneliness. Many people stay busy to avoid meeting themselves. Many people stay surrounded to avoid the silence where truth waits. Your aloneness is not an absence of love. It is an invitation to a deeper, more authentic love that begins within. Healing begins within, and it often begins in solitude. When there is no one to distract you, you start to feel what you have been avoiding. Old grief rises. Unspoken anger surfaces. Forgotten dreams knock again at the door of your awareness. This is not regression. This is integration. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel, and you cannot become whole while running from your own inner landscape. Walking alone gives you the courage to sit with yourself, to offer compassion where judgment once lived, to forgive yourself for not knowing what you did not yet know. Forgiveness is the path to freedom, and for the chosen one, forgiveness is not just about others. It is about releasing the resentment you hold toward life for being difficult, toward yourself for being different, toward the past for not matching your expectations. There are no justified resentments because resentment chains you to the very thing you want to move beyond. When you forgive, you are not condoning what happened. You are choosing not to carry it forward. You are choosing lightness over bitterness, expansion over contraction. As you release the past, you discover a surprising truth. You are already enough. You do not need to prove your worth through suffering, achievement, or sacrifice. You do not need to earn your right to exist. Your being here is not an accident, and your uniqueness is not a mistake. The loneliness you have felt has been shaping you, refining your sensitivity, sharpening your awareness, teaching you to rely on inner guidance rather than external validation. The chosen ones are often called to lead, but not in the traditional sense. They lead by example, by presence, by embodying a different way of being. They become reminders of what is possible when a human being lives from alignment rather than fear. And leadership of this kind requires inner authority. It requires knowing who you are when no one is watching, trusting your path even when it is not understood, standing in your truth without needing to convince anyone else. There is a paradox here that the ego struggles to accept. The more you stop trying to fit in, the more you belong to yourself. And when you belong to yourself, you become a magnet for connections that are real, nourishing, and aligned. The solitude is not permanent, it is purposeful. It is the clearing of the ground so that what arrives next is not built on compromise or pretense, but on authenticity. Living in the now becomes essential on this path, because the mind will try to project your solitude into a permanent future or reinterpret it as a failure of the past. But life only unfolds in this moment. In this moment, you are breathing. In this moment, you are aware. In this moment, you are supported by an intelligence that beats your heart and moves the stars without your effort. When you anchor yourself in the present, the story of lack dissolves and a quiet gratitude begins to take its place. You may notice that as you walk alone, your sensitivity deepens. You feel more, see more, intuit more. This can be overwhelming at times, but it is also your gift. You are learning to trust your inner compass, to honor your energy, to say no to what drains you and yes to what feels alive. This discernment is part of your preparation. You are not being set apart to be superior, you are being set apart to be clear. The chosen ones are often misunderstood, not because they are confusing, but because they reflect back what others have not yet faced within themselves. Your presence can be unsettling to those who are still identified with their masks. Your questions can feel threatening to those who rely on certainty for security. This is not your responsibility to manage. Your responsibility is to remain true, gentle, and grounded in your own alignment. When the path becomes quiet, when there are fewer voices around you, listen carefully. The silence is teaching you how to hear yourself. It is teaching you how to sit in your own company without needing to escape. It is teaching you that peace does not come from being surrounded, but from being centered. In this quiet, you begin to sense your divine nature, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived experience of connection, meaning, and inner freedom. You are a divine being having a human experience, and that divinity does not require constant affirmation to exist. It simply is. When you remember this, the loneliness transforms. It becomes sacred space. It becomes a sanctuary where you reconnect with the source of your being. From this place, you no longer seek to be chosen by the world, because you know you are already chosen by life itself. And then, almost without effort, something shifts. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is being asked of me?" You stop trying to return to who you were, and you begin to step into who you are becoming. The alone time has done its work. It has stripped away what is false, strengthened what is real, and aligned you with a purpose that feels less like a job and more like a calling. The chosen ones walk alone for a time so that when they walk with others, they do so from wholeness rather than need. They love without attachment, serve without self-erasure, and connect without losing themselves. They know that their value does not fluctuate with circumstances, and their peace does not depend on external arrangements. If you are walking alone right now, trust that this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your alignment with a deeper truth. You are being guided, even when it feels unclear. You are being supported, even when it feels quiet. And you are being prepared, even when it feels uncomfortable. Stay with yourself. Be gentle with your process. Honor the solitude without labeling it as lack. The path you are on is ancient and meaningful, and it leads not away from life, but into it. When the world misunderstands you, when others drift away, when the path becomes quiet, remember this: you are not lost. You are listening, you are not alone, you are aligning, and in that alignment, you are stepping into the freedom, the peace, and the purpose that were always meant to be yours. And as you remain with yourself in this sacred quiet, something even more subtle begins to unfold. You start to notice that the aloneness you once resisted is not cold or empty, but alive, intelligent, responsive. It listens to you. It answers you. It mirrors you back to yourself with an honesty that no crowd ever could. In this space, you are no longer performing, no longer adjusting your tone to be understood, no longer shrinking or stretching to belong. You are simply present. And presence, when allowed to deepen, becomes a doorway. Here is where the chosen one begins to recognize that walking alone was never about isolation from others, but about reunion with the self. The outer separations were merely reflections of an inner remembering. You are coming home to the part of you that existed before opinions shaped you, before expectations bent you, before fear taught you to doubt your own knowing. This remembering is gentle, but it is irreversible. Once you see that your value does not come from being needed, applauded, or understood, you cannot unsee it. A quiet strength takes root, one that does not announce itself, yet cannot be shaken. You may feel drawn now to simplicity, to fewer words, to deeper breaths, to moments that feel real rather than impressive. This is not withdrawal from life, it is refinement of life. The soul always moves toward what is essential. It sheds excess the way a tree releases dead leaves, not out of rejection, but out of wisdom. You are learning that energy is sacred, and where you place it determines what grows within you. Walking alone has taught you discernment, and discernment is love in its most mature form. There will be moments when the old world tries to pull you back with familiar patterns, familiar dramas, familiar roles, and you may feel a tenderness for who you used to be, the one who tried harder, explained more, tolerated less alignment just to avoid being alone. Bless that version of you. Do not judge it. It did exactly what it knew to do at the time, but you are not required to live there anymore. Growth does not ask for loyalty to outdated versions of the self. It asks for honesty. As this honesty deepens, you begin to feel a new relationship with uncertainty. Where fear once lived, curiosity now arises. Where anxiety once tightened your chest, a quiet trust begins to breathe. You no longer need to know how everything will unfold to feel safe. You sense, perhaps for the first time, that life is not happening to you, but through you. That you are not separate from the flow you once tried to control. This realization softens you. It humbles you. It frees you. And freedom, true freedom, is never loud. It does not demand attention. It does not need permission. It is the internal permission you give yourself to be as you are, where you are, without resistance. It is the release of the inner argument with reality. The chosen one eventually understands that peace is not found by arranging the world, but by aligning with it. When you stop insisting that life look a certain way to validate you, life begins to reveal its quiet generosity. You may notice now that your compassion has expanded, not in a sentimental way, but in a grounded, spacious way. You see others walking their own paths, carrying their own fears, acting from their own level of awareness. You no longer need to correct them or convince them. You simply allow them. This allowance is not indifference. It is maturity. It is the understanding that everyone is at a different point in their remembering, and that forcing insight only creates resistance. From this place, connection begins to return, but it arrives differently. It is no longer driven by need or loneliness, but by resonance. You recognize kindred spirits not by how much they fill the space, but by how peaceful you feel in their presence. There is no rush, no grasping, no urgency to define or secure. You trust that what is aligned will remain, and what is not will gently fall away without drama. This trust is not naivete. It is wisdom earned through solitude. The chosen ones do not walk alone forever, but they never walk unconsciously again. They carry the silence with them, even in conversation. They carry the stillness into movement, They have learned how to be with themselves, and this becomes the foundation for every relationship, every creation, every offering they bring into the world. They are no longer seeking to be completed because they have discovered their own wholeness. And so, if you find yourself here now, standing in this in-between space where the old no longer fits and the new has not fully arrived, rest. Do not rush the unfolding. Trust the intelligence that has guided you this far without a map. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where a soul of your depth must be to become what it came here to be. The path may still feel quiet at times, but it is no longer empty. It is filled with presence, with awareness, with a subtle joy that does not depend on circumstance. And as you continue forward, you may realize that what once felt like loneliness has transformed into companionship with life itself. You are walking, yes, but you are not alone. You are being carried by something vast, intelligent, and infinitely patient. This is why the chosen ones walk alone for a season, not to be diminished, but to be revealed, not to be separated from love, but to remember its source. And as you keep walking softly, honestly, awake to your own being, you become a quiet light, not trying to shine, simply unable not to. And in this gentle revealing, another truth rises to meet you, one that reshapes how you understand your own journey. You begin to see that the pauses, the gaps, the seasons of seeming stillness were never interruptions in your life. They were the curriculum. They were the moments when the outer world stepped back so the inner world could step forward and speak. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Even the ache you once labeled as loneliness was a teacher, quietly guiding you inward, away from noise and toward knowing. You start to sense that your life has been less about accumulation and more about subtraction, less about becoming someone new and more about remembering what was always there. Each time something fell away, it was not taken from you, it was released from you. Roles that no longer fit, relationships that no longer resonated, dreams that were born from expectation rather than truth. And with each release, a little more space opened inside you, space for clarity, space for peace, space for a deeper kind of joy that does not announce itself but steadily endures. There comes a moment when you realize that you no longer need to explain yourself. The urge to be understood softens, and in its place grows a quiet self-acceptance. You understand now that not everyone is meant to walk beside you, and that this does not diminish your worth or theirs. Different paths serve different awakenings. You are no longer offended by distance. You respect it. You see it as a natural expression of alignment rather than rejection. This is where inner freedom truly takes root. Freedom from the need to perform. Freedom from the need to compare. Freedom from the belief that your life must resemble anyone else's to be valid. You feel lighter, not because life has become effortless, but because you are no longer resisting it. You meet challenges with curiosity instead of dread, with presence instead of panic. You trust yourself now, not because you have all the answers, but because you have learned to listen. And listening changes everything. You listen to your body when it asks for rest. You listen to your heart when it whispers truth. You listen to your intuition when it gently redirects you away from what drains you and toward what nourishes you. This listening is an act of self-respect, and self-respect naturally gives rise to self-love, not the fragile kind that depends on praise, but the steady kind that remains even when you are unseen. As this love deepens, you notice something quietly miraculous. The world begins to respond differently to you, not because you demand it, but because your energy has changed. You are no longer pushing against life, and life no longer pushes back. Opportunities arise not from striving, but from alignment. Encounters feel purposeful, even when brief. There is a sense of being guided, of being met exactly where you are. You understand now that walking alone was never a sign that you were disconnected from life. It was a sign that you were being invited into a more intimate relationship with it. In the silence, you learn to hear. In the emptiness, you learn to trust. In the solitude, you learn to stand in your own presence without collapsing or hardening. These lessons are not visible to the world, but they are unmistakable within you. And so you continue, not with urgency, but with quiet confidence. You do not rush towards some imagined destination because you have discovered that the path itself is alive, responsive, and sufficient. Each step is enough. Each breath is enough. You are enough, not someday, not when something changes, but now as you are. The chosen ones do not walk alone because they are meant to suffer. They walk alone because they are meant to remember. And when remembrance takes hold, the loneliness dissolves into something far more enduring, a steady companionship with your own soul, and a deep, unshakable trust in the intelligence that moves all things, including you, exactly where they need to be. And now, as this understanding settles into you, not as an idea but as a felt knowing, there is a deep exhale that moves through your being. It is the release of the struggle to arrive somewhere else, to be someone else, to prove something that never needed proof. You sense that the journey has not been about finding your place in the world, but about allowing the world to find its place within you. This is the quiet turning point where seeking gives way to allowing. You recognize that the path of the chosen one is not marked by noise or spectacle, but by sincerity, by the willingness to stand naked before life without armor, without pretense, without the need to be carried by belief systems that no longer feel true. You have learned how to walk with uncertainty as a companion rather than an enemy, how to let questions remain open without demanding immediate answers. In this openness, wisdom flows naturally without effort. There is a gentleness now in the way you move through the world. Not a weakness, but a strength that comes from no longer needing to defend your existence. You do not rush to be seen because you are no longer afraid of being invisible. You do not cling to outcomes because you trust the unfolding. You have discovered that peace is not something you chase. It is something you uncover when you stop interfering with your own becoming. And in this peace, something extraordinary reveals itself. Gratitude without conditions. Gratitude not because everything turned out the way you wanted, but because everything shaped you into someone capable of presence, compassion, and depth. Even the moments that broke you open now feel like sacred thresholds. They stripped away what was false and revealed what was real. They taught you how to bend without breaking, how to feel without drowning, how to love without losing yourself. You begin to see that your aloneness was never a detour from love. It was love refining itself within you, teaching you how to source it internally rather than seek it externally, teaching you how to sit with yourself in silence and discover that you are not empty, not lacking, not abandoned, but full, connected, and held by something far greater than circumstance. And so you walk forward now, not alone in the way you once feared, but accompanied by a quiet certainty that cannot be shaken. A certainty that life is intelligent, that you are guided, that every step you take from this place of alignment sends a ripple into the world, even if no one applauds it, even if no one notices it. The impact of a soul at peace is subtle, but it is profound. You no longer ask the world to understand you, you understand yourself. You no longer wait for permission to live truthfully, you live. And in living this way, awake, present, unguarded, you fulfill the very reason you felt different from the beginning. Not to stand apart in suffering, but to stand rooted in truth. Not to escape humanity, but to bring something quietly healing back into it. This is why the chosen ones walk alone for a time. So they can remember who they are without interference. So they can hear the voice beneath all other voices. So they can return to the world not seeking to be filled, but ready to overflow. And as you take your next step, and the next, and the next, may you carry this knowing gently within you. You were never behind, never forgotten, never misplaced. You were preparing. You were listening. You were becoming. And now, without forcing, without striving, without fear, you simply allow life to move through you, freely, lovingly, and exactly as it was always meant to. There is a gentle truth whispering beneath all the noise of your life, a truth that has never raised its voice, never competed with your worries, never argued with your fears, and yet has always been present, patiently waiting for you to notice it. It says to you now, not as a command, not as a demand, but as an invitation born of love. You do not need to stress. You were never meant to live clenched inside your own mind, gripping life as if it might slip away the moment you loosen your hold. Stress is not strength. Tension is not control. Worry is not wisdom. They are habits of forgetting who you really are. When you are stressed, you are leaning into a belief that the universe is unsafe, that life is hostile, that everything depends on your constant vigilance. Stress is the body's way of saying, I think I'm alone in this, and the quiet voice of the divine responds again and again, you never were. But that voice does not shout over your racing thoughts. It does not interrupt your mental rehearsals of what could go wrong. It waits for stillness, because stillness is the language through which guidance flows. You see, guidance does not arrive through panic. Insight does not emerge from pressure. The next right step is rarely revealed when you are mentally pacing the room of your fears. Divine intelligence moves with elegance, with simplicity, with calm certainty. It moves like breath, like gravity, like the turning of seasons. And when you stress, you close the door to that movement, not because you are punished, but because you are distracted. You are listening to the voice of urgency instead of the voice of truth. Take a moment now and notice what stress feels like inside you. Not the story behind it, not the justification for it, but the sensation itself. The tight jaw, the shallow breath, the shoulders lifted as if bracing for impact. Stress is a contraction, a pulling inward, a forgetting of the vastness that holds you. Faith, on the other hand, is an exhale. It is not blind optimism or denial of difficulty. It is the deep knowing that even in difficulty, you are carried. Faith is the recognition that the same intelligence that beats your heart without your permission is also orchestrating your life beyond your understanding. There is something profoundly healing that happens when you stop arguing with the moment you are in. Stress is an argument with reality. It says, this shouldn't be happening, or I can't handle this, or I need this to be different right now. And every argument with what is creates friction inside your soul. But when you soften, when you breathe, when you allow the moment to be exactly as it is without labeling it as a mistake, a subtle shift occurs. You begin to feel supported rather than attacked by life. This is not about passivity. It is about alignment. When you stop stressing, you are not giving up responsibility. You are giving up resistance. You are stepping out of the illusion that you must carry the weight of the world on your nervous system. You are remembering that you are a channel, not the source. The river does not stress about reaching the ocean. It flows, and the destination takes care of itself. In the same way, your life is not asking you to force outcomes, but to cooperate with the intelligence already moving through you. There is a sacred paradox here that the ego struggles to understand. The more you try to control everything, the less peace you feel, and the more you release your grip, the more clarity arrives. This is not coincidence. This is design. The ego believes that tension equals safety, that vigilance equals power, that worry is a form of love. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul knows that love is trust, that power is presence, that safety is not found in predicting every possible future, but in resting in the awareness that whatever unfolds, you will be guided through it. God speaks the loudest when you are quiet inside. Not because God prefers silence, but because silence is the state in which you can hear. Guidance is always broadcasting, but stress is static. Worry is interference. When your mind is racing, you are tuned to the wrong frequency. When you slow down, when you breathe deeply, when you release the need to know everything right now, you begin to receive insights that feel less like thoughts and more like recognitions. They arrive as calm certainty. They arrive as gentle nudges. They arrive as a sense of, this feels right, rather than a frantic, what if? You may have noticed this before in small moments. When you stopped trying so hard, the answer came. When you let go of forcing a decision, clarity emerged. When you finally relaxed, the solution appeared effortlessly. These are not accidents. They are reminders. Reminders that stress is not the doorway to progress. Surrender is. And surrender, in its truest form, is not weakness. It is alignment with a wisdom far greater than the thinking mind. There is a part of you that already knows how to live without stress. It is the part of you that existed before you learned to worry, before you learned to measure your worth by outcomes, before you learned to believe that love must be earned through struggle. This part of you is not impressed by chaos. It is not intimidated by uncertainty. It knows that life unfolds exactly as it needs to for your growth, even when the path is not immediately clear. Stress often arises from the belief that something essential is missing, that you are behind, that you should be further along, that you are not enough as you are right now. And yet the truth is quietly radical. You are already enough. Not when you fix everything, not when you figure it all out. Now, in this breath, in this imperfect, unfolding moment, when you accept this, not intellectually but experientially, The nervous system relaxes, the body softens, the heart opens, and in that openness, guidance flows naturally. Healing begins within, not as an act of effort, but as an act of allowance. You do not heal by fighting yourself into peace. You heal by stopping the inner war. You heal by noticing how often you push yourself, criticize yourself, pressure yourself to be different than you are. Stress is often self-directed violence masquerading as motivation. It is the belief that you must be harsh with yourself to survive. But love has never required force. Transformation does not come from tension, it comes from compassion. Imagine what would happen if you treated yourself with the same gentleness you would offer a frightened child. You would not shout at them to calm down. You would not demand that they have all the answers. You would sit with them. You would reassure them. You would remind them that they are safe. In doing so, you would regulate their nervous system, not by logic, but by presence. This is exactly what the divine presence does for you when you allow it in. It does not scold you for worrying. It simply waits for you to soften enough to feel held. When you stop stressing, you create space. And space is sacred. Space is where insight enters. Space is where intuition whispers. Space is where miracles feel ordinary. The mind wants to fill every gap with planning, predicting, and protecting. But the soul thrives in openness, in the pause between thoughts, in the breath between breaths, in the moment when you admit, I don't know, and that's okay. There are no justified resentments, because resentment is stress stored in the heart. It is the refusal to let life move forward. It is the belief that peace must wait until the past is corrected. But the past cannot be corrected. It can only be released. Forgiveness is not about condoning what hurt you. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying it. And when you forgive, when you truly let go, the body relaxes, the mind clears, and guidance rushes in like fresh air into a sealed room. Forgiveness is the path to freedom because it dissolves the inner tension that blocks love. And love is not sentimental, it is intelligent. Love knows how to guide. Love knows how to heal. Love knows how to lead you step by step, moment by moment, into a life that feels aligned rather than forced. When you forgive, you are not losing anything. You are reclaiming yourself. Change your thoughts, and you change your life. Not because positive thinking manipulates reality, but because your thoughts determine what you are available to receive. A stressed mind is closed. A peaceful mind is open. An open mind notices opportunities that a tense mind overlooks. An open heart senses timing that a fearful heart mistrusts. When you change your inner climate from pressure to presence, the outer landscape responds in ways that often feel miraculous, though they are simply natural. You are not your ego. The ego thrives on urgency, comparison, and control. It believes that if it relaxes, everything will fall apart. But you are not that voice. You are the awareness that hears it. You are the stillness beneath it. You are the field in which thoughts arise and dissolve. And the moment you identify with the observer rather than the noise, stress begins to lose its grip. You no longer need to silence the mind. You simply stop obeying it. Living in the now is not a spiritual slogan. It is a physiological necessity. Stress always lives in the future or the past. Peace lives here. Right now, in this breath, you are okay. Right now, you are alive. Right now, nothing is required of you except presence. And when you anchor yourself here, guidance does not feel distant or mysterious. It feels intimate. It feels personal. It feels like a quiet confidence that says, take this step, and then, now this one. The soul always knows. It knows when to rest. It knows when to act. It knows when to speak and when to wait. But it cannot guide you if you are constantly overriding it with fear. Stress is often the refusal to listen. Faith is the willingness to trust what you sense rather than what you fear. And trust is not built by forcing certainty. It is built by noticing how often you have been carried through moments you once thought would break you. You are a divine being having a human experience, not a human being desperately trying to earn divine support. Support is not conditional. It is not withdrawn when you make mistakes. It is not delayed until you are calm enough to deserve it. It is constant. But you must be receptive. And receptivity requires softness. It requires humility. It requires the courage to stop pushing and start allowing. So breathe now, not as a technique, but as a remembrance. Each breath is proof that you are sustained. Each exhale is permission to let go. You do not have to solve your entire life in this moment. You only have to stop fighting it. And in that surrender, something remarkable happens. The noise fades, the body relaxes, the heart opens, and in the quiet that follows, guidance emerges, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a gentle knowing. Stress closes the door. Faith opens it. And faith is not the absence of fear, but the decision not to let fear lead. When you choose faith, you choose alignment. You choose peace. You choose to trust that even when you cannot see the whole path, the next step will be revealed. And it will be revealed not through tension, but through stillness. Remember this, you are not here to suffer your way into worthiness. You are here to remember who you are. You are here to live from the inside out. You are here to let life move through you rather than against you. And every time you stop stressing, every time you soften your thoughts, every time you choose presence over panic, you open yourself to a guidance that has never left you. Be quiet inside, not by force, but by kindness. Let the storm settle. Let the waters clear. And you will see that you were never abandoned, never unsupported, never alone. You were simply listening to the wrong voice. Now listen to the one that speaks in peace. And as you listen now, not with your ears, but with the quiet center of your being, notice how something within you is already responding. There is a subtle loosening, a gentle recognition, as if an inner knot you forgot you were carrying has begun to untie itself. This is not imagination. This is remembrance. The body remembers peace. The soul remembers trust. You are not learning something new. You are returning to something ancient within you. There is a rhythm to life that cannot be hurried without consequence. When you rush, when you press, when you demand answers before their season, you move out of sync with that rhythm. Stress is often the sound of being out of tune with your own nature. And nature never strains. The stars do not rush across the sky. The seed does not panic underground. Everything unfolds according to an intelligence that does not consult fear. When you align with that intelligence, effort becomes graceful and action flows without force. You may have believed that your stress was proof of your commitment, that your worry showed how deeply you cared, but caring does not require suffering. Love does not need anxiety to validate its sincerity. In truth, stress clouds the very wisdom you need to care effectively. When your mind is tight, your vision narrows. When your heart is guarded, your intuition quiets. Peace is not indifference, it is clarity. And clarity allows you to respond rather than react. There is a profound difference between responding and reacting. Reaction is driven by old conditioning, by unexamined fears, by the past repeating itself through you. Response arises from presence. It is fresh. It is alive. It is informed by the now rather than imprisoned by yesterday. When you stop stressing, you step out of reaction and into response. You give yourself access to choice, and choice is the birthplace of freedom. Consider how often you attempt to manage outcomes instead of tending to alignment. You focus on results, timelines, and guarantees, believing that if you could just secure the future, you could finally relax. But the future cannot be secured through tension. It can only be entered through trust. Alignment is your true responsibility. When you are aligned with peace, with truth, with love, outcomes arrange themselves in ways the anxious mind could never orchestrate. There is a sacred intelligence moving through every challenge you face. It is shaping you, refining you, inviting you into greater awareness. Stress resists this process. It says, I should not be here, or this should not be happening. But growth often arrives disguised as inconvenience. Guidance often comes disguised as uncertainty. When you meet these moments with openness instead of resistance, they reveal their purpose gently, without struggle. You are not broken because you feel overwhelmed at times. You are human. But you are also more than human. And the part of you that is more than human is never overwhelmed. It observes. It understands. It waits. When you identify with that deeper awareness, stress becomes a passing weather pattern rather than a permanent climate. You stop asking, how do I fix this? And begin asking, what is this teaching me? And in that shift, wisdom unfolds. Stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness without noise. It is the fertile ground from which insight grows. When you allow moments of stillness into your life, even brief ones, you give your inner guidance a place to land. You do not need hours of silence or a perfect environment. You need willingness. A single conscious breath can interrupt a lifetime of habitual tension. A single moment of surrender can recalibrate your entire nervous system. Notice how peace feels when you stop chasing it and simply allow it. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, like dawn, gradually illuminating what was always there. In peace, you do not lose your edge, you lose your fear. And fear has never been a reliable advisor. Peace sharpens perception. It refines intention. It brings you back into harmony with the intelligence that animates all life. There is a deeper trust being asked of you now. Not trust that everything will go according to your plans, but trust that you will be guided even when plans dissolve. Life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. And when you stop resisting its flow, you become a participant rather than a combatant. You move with life instead of against it. And life, in its wisdom, always supports those who cooperate with its rhythm. You do not need to earn rest. Rest is your natural state when you stop believing the story that you must constantly prove your worth. Worth is inherent. It is not negotiated through productivity or validated through exhaustion. When you release the need to justify your existence, your body relaxes into its natural intelligence. Healing accelerates. Creativity returns. Joy becomes accessible again. There is an inner voice that speaks without urgency, without threat, without pressure. It does not demand immediate action. It invites gentle awareness. This voice is not impressed by panic. It is activated by presence. When you feel compelled to rush, to fix, to control, pause and ask yourself, who is speaking right now? If the voice carries fear, it is not the voice of guidance. Guidance carries peace, even when it asks you to take bold steps. The mind may argue with this. It may insist that calm is unrealistic, that peace is naive, that vigilance is necessary. But the mind has been trained by a world that equates struggle with value. You are allowed to unlearn that lesson. You are allowed to choose ease without guilt. Ease does not mean a lack of depth, it means alignment with truth. Every time you choose to soften instead of tighten, you send a signal to your entire being that you are safe, and safety is the foundation of intuition. When you feel safe, your inner guidance becomes clear, precise, and reliable. When you feel threatened, even by imagined futures, your system goes into defense and wisdom retreats. Peace invites wisdom forward. So allow yourself to trust the pause. Allow yourself to not know for a moment. Allow yourself to be held by something greater than your plans. You are not abandoning responsibility. You are redefining it. Your responsibility is not to control life, but to align with it. And alignment begins the moment you stop stressing and start listening. There is nothing missing right now. Nothing is wrong in this moment. Even your uncertainty is part of the unfolding. When you stop labeling it as a problem, it becomes a doorway. And beyond that doorway is a quieter, wiser way of living, one where guidance is not chased but received, where peace is not postponed but practiced, and where you remember again and again that you were never meant to do this alone. And now, as the words continue to move through you, let them settle not in the intellect but in the space beneath it, where knowing does not need explanation. There is a quiet courage that arises when you stop insisting on certainty. It is the courage to remain open, to remain present, to remain receptive, even when the mind would prefer closure. This courage is not loud or dramatic. It feels like steadiness. It feels like standing firmly in the middle of life without needing to push it away or pull it closer. There is an unseen order to things that reveals itself only when you stop interfering with it. Stress is interference. It is the attempt to force clarity before it is ripe. It is the refusal to let mystery do its work. But mystery is not your enemy. Mystery is the womb of creation. Every insight, every revelation, every transformation begins in not knowing. When you allow yourself to rest there without panic, you discover that uncertainty is not emptiness, it is possibility. Notice how often you confuse urgency with importance. The loudest demands are rarely the truest ones. What is truly meant for you does not require strain. It does not arrive with threat or pressure. It aligns. It resonates. It feels quietly inevitable. Stress pulls you away from that resonance. It convinces you that you must rush toward what is already moving toward you in perfect timing. Timing is a sacred intelligence. It cannot be bullied. It cannot be negotiated with fear. It unfolds when conditions are aligned, when you are ready to receive without distortion. When you stress, you distort perception. You see obstacles where there are invitations. You see delays where there is preparation. You see endings where there are thresholds. Peace restores accurate vision. It allows you to see life as it is, not as fear predicts it will be. There is a deep humility in allowing guidance instead of demanding control. It is the humility of recognizing that the same intelligence that formed galaxies also moves through your smallest decisions. You do not need to manage that intelligence. You need to cooperate with it. Cooperation begins with listening. Listening begins with stillness. And stillness begins the moment you stop arguing with the present. You may notice that when you relax your grip, emotions rise that you have been holding at bay. This is not regression. It is release. Stress often acts as a lid, keeping grief, fatigue, and longing suppressed. When the lid lifts, feelings surface, asking to be acknowledged, not fixed. Allow them. Emotions are energy-seeking movement. When you stop resisting them, they move through you and leave clarity in their wake. There is a tenderness required here, a willingness to be with yourself without judgment. You are not meant to be perpetually strong, perpetually composed, perpetually certain. You are meant to be authentic. Authenticity creates alignment. Alignment invites guidance. Guidance restores peace. This is the cycle you return to when you stop stressing and start trusting. Pay attention to how guidance feels in the body. It is not frantic. It does not tighten your chest or shorten your breath. It often feels expansive, even when it challenges you. It carries a sense of rightness that does not need defense. When you feel compelled to justify a decision through fear, pause. Guidance does not need justification. It needs permission. You are learning to live from a deeper center now, one that is not governed by external approval or internal pressure. From this center, action arises naturally. You do what needs to be done, not because you are afraid of consequences, but because it aligns with truth. This kind of action is efficient without being exhausting. It is purposeful without being forced. It leaves you feeling more yourself, not less. The world may continue to move quickly around you. Noise may persist. Demands may still appear. But something within you has shifted. You no longer take every signal as a summons. You no longer interpret every challenge as a threat. You discern. You choose. You respond from presence, and presence is the doorway through which divine guidance flows effortlessly. There is a quiet joy that emerges when you realize you do not have to outrun life. You do not have to anticipate every turn. You do not have to brace yourself for impact. Life is not chasing you. It is inviting you. And the invitation is always the same. Come back to now. Soften your thoughts. Trust the intelligence that breathes you. As you continue forward, remember this feeling not as a memory, but as a reference point. Whenever stress returns, let it be a signal, not a failure. A signal to pause. A signal to breathe. A signal to listen. Stress is not an enemy to defeat. It is a reminder to return home to yourself. And in that return, again and again, you will find what has always been waiting, a guidance that does not shout, a support that does not waver, and a peace that does not depend on circumstances, only on your willingness to be still enough to receive it. And now, let the words dissolve into something quieter than language, something that does not need to be remembered because it is already part of you. Feel how the effort to hold everything together can finally soften. You do not need to brace yourself anymore. You are allowed to rest inside the truth that life is not an enemy to conquer, but a partner inviting you into trust. There is a deeper intelligence carrying you forward, even when your mind cannot see the road. It has always been there, guiding your breath, healing your wounds, arranging meetings, endings, beginnings, and pauses with a precision that fear could never design. When you stop stressing, you stop interrupting that intelligence. You step aside just enough for grace to move freely. Notice how peace does not require anything from you. It does not ask you to improve, to hurry, or to become someone else. It simply asks you to arrive, to be here, to feel your own presence without judgment. In that arrival, something sacred happens. You remember that you are not late, not behind, not failing. You are unfolding. The urge to worry may still visit from time to time. Let it come without resistance. Let it pass without obedience. You no longer need to fight it or analyze it. Simply notice it and return to the quiet place beneath it. Every return strengthens your trust. Every moment of softness rewires your relationship with life. There is a freedom in realizing that you do not have to push the river. You do not have to demand signs or force clarity. What is meant to reach you will do so with ease. What is meant to leave will do so with purpose. And what remains will shape you gently, not through strain, but through understanding. You are learning to live from the inside out now, from presence instead of pressure, from faith instead of fear, from listening instead of forcing. This way of living does not make life smaller, it makes it truer. You begin to notice beauty where you once saw threat. You begin to feel supported where you once felt alone. And in this quieter way of being, guidance becomes ordinary. It shows up in a feeling, a pause, a sense of calm, certainty. It guides you not away from life, but deeper into it, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment. So let go now, not dramatically, not all at once, but gently. Release the need to have everything resolved. Release the belief that stress is necessary. Release the habit of carrying tomorrow's weight today. You were never meant to live like that. Be still enough to hear what has always been speaking to you in peace. Trust enough to follow what feels true rather than what feels urgent. And remember, whenever the world feels loud or uncertain, that you can return here to this quiet center where guidance waits patiently and where you are always unmistakably held.